Welcome to Life Stories, where we share tales of love, transformation, and the unexpected twists life can offer. Today, we bring you a heartfelt journey of Emily, a single mother struggling to balance work and parenthood, and Jack, her distant employer. What begins as a challenge, with Emily bringing her sick baby to work, evolves into a profound connection that changes their lives forever. Join us as we explore the power of empathy, love, and second chances. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin the story today. And stay tuned for more inspiring life stories that touch the heart. Every morning, like clockwork, the alarm would ring at 5 a.m. It was a sound I had come to dread. Yet there was no escaping it. My arm would stretch out, feeling for the snooze button in the dim light of dawn. My eyes barely open, hoping for just a few more minutes of rest before the chaos of another day began. But I couldn't afford to stay in bed. Not anymore. Noah, my 6-month-old son, was asleep in his tiny crib beside me. His soft breathing, the rise and fall of his chest, was the only comfort I had. I smiled at him, despite the fatigue that clouded my vision. There was something magical about watching him sleep so peacefully, untouched by the challenges of the world. But peace was a luxury I could no longer afford. His father had left when I told him I was pregnant, and I was left to navigate the overwhelming journey of single motherhood. It wasn't just the sleepless nights and endless feedings. It was the constant struggle to make ends meet, the pressure of providing for him while trying to maintain my own sense of self. I worked at the Parker Estate, a luxurious mansion nestled in the heart of the city. An opportunity that had offered me a decent paycheck but came with high expectations. Every day, I put on my neatly pressed gray uniform, gathered my hair into a ponytail, and prepared myself for the grind. My boss, Jack Parker, was a man of few words, his demeanor cold and businesslike, and I had learned to adapt, to stay out of his way, to do my job without drawing attention. But this morning was different. As I hurriedly prepared for another day, I saw a notification on my phone. It was a message from the babysitter. My heart sank as I read it. "I'm deeply sorry, Emily, but I'm unwell today. I won't be able to look after Noah." The message sent a chill down my spine. This was the third time in a month that the babysitter had canceled on me, and I was running out of options. I reached out to my neighbor, my cousin, even the woman at the corner store. But no one could help. There was no one I could trust to care for Noah at the last minute. Time was running out. I could already hear the relentless ticking of the clock in my mind, reminding me that I had a job to do. I had no choice. I couldn't afford to lose my position at the Parker Estate. So, I grabbed Noah, bundled him up in his warmest clothes, and tucked him into a small backpack, hoping no one would notice. The mansion was half an hour away, located in the city's prestigious district. But I had to do this. I hoped that Jack Parker, my boss, had already left for the day. I slipped through the service door, trying to keep a low profile. "Emily, what on earth is that child doing here?" Carmen, the housekeeper, exclaimed when she spotted me. I froze for a moment, feeling the weight of her disapproval. "My babysitter canceled, Carmen. I had no one to leave him with. I swear it's just for today," I explained quickly, my voice trembling. The last thing I needed was for Jack to find out. Carmen looked at me with concern in her eyes, but she said nothing. Instead, she sighed and muttered, "You're playing a dangerous game, Emily. Should Mr. Parker find out, you'll be out of a job." No questions asked. I nodded quickly, already feeling the dread creeping in. "I'll keep him in the utility room. I promise no one will notice." I rushed off, my heart pounding as I made my way to the small room where I could keep Noah out of sight. I did my best to focus on my work, cleaning the windows, polishing the furniture, but I couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. I couldn't hide him forever. But as the hours passed, I began to hope that maybe, just maybe, Jack would never find out. However, just as I was finishing up in one of the hallways, I heard a sound that froze me in place. A cry. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it was Noah. The fear surged through me as I rushed to the utility room where I had left him. His face was flushed with a fever, his small body writhing in discomfort. I cradled him in my arms, desperately trying to calm him down. But nothing worked. He continued to cry, his tiny face scrunching up in distress. I knew I had to act fast. I rushed him to the kitchen, praying I wouldn't run into anyone. I dampened a cloth and placed it on his forehead, trying to ease his fever. But in my rush, I didn't hear the front door open. When I finally looked up, my breath caught in my throat. There, standing in the doorway, was Jack Parker. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on me, his expression unreadable. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked, his voice cold and cutting. I froze, holding Noah tighter in my arms, feeling the weight of the situation crash down on me. I had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. I could barely bring myself to speak. Finally, I whispered. "My babysitter backed out. I had no one else to care for him. And he's sick. He has a fever." Jack's gaze softened ever so slightly, though his face remained largely impassive. For a moment, I thought he would dismiss me, tell me to leave, but instead, he let out a deep sigh. "Keep the child away from me until you can secure proper care for him," he said, his voice more resigned than angry. Then, without another word, he turned and left. I stood there, my heart racing, Noah still in my arms, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Jack, the cold and distant employer, had shown a moment of empathy. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental in that moment. What had I just witnessed? Would he truly let me stay? Would my job be safe? 3 days passed, and I remained on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Each morning, I prepared for the inevitable call to Jack's office, expecting him to tell me I was dismissed. But it never came. My job was still intact. In fact, Jack had started to act differently around me. The air between us had shifted, and I couldn't help but wonder what had changed. Was it possible that there was more to him than I had thought? I could sense that Jack was not the man I had initially believed him to be. There was more beneath that hardened exterior, and I was starting to see it, slowly, carefully. Maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to change. Days passed, and the days themselves seemed to stretch into something different, something unspoken, but undeniably present. There was an odd shift in the atmosphere around the Parker estate, one I couldn't quite place. At first, I attributed it to my own heightened state of alert. But then, as I continued with my daily tasks, I began to realize that Jack, my boss, was changing in subtle ways. He was still the distant, efficient man I had always known, but there was something softer, more human about him, and it was impossible to ignore. One afternoon, while I was polishing the windows in the grand dining room, I caught a glimpse of Jack working in his study through the open door. He had always been reserved, keeping to himself, running his business with a cold efficiency that made him an intimidating figure. Yet today, as I stood there, watching him from a distance, I couldn't help but notice something that hadn't been there before. His brow furrowed in thought, his posture more relaxed than usual, as if he wasn't completely absorbed in his work. For the first time, he appeared human. It was a fleeting moment, but it left me with a strange sense of warmth. The days following the incident with Noah seemed to blend into one another. And as if by some unspoken agreement, Jack began to let me bring Noah into the estate with me more often. At first, it was only for brief periods, just to ensure that I could focus on my work without constantly worrying about my son. But the more time passed, the more comfortable I became with the arrangement. The mansion, once so cold and unwelcoming, began to feel like a strange, makeshift home. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, at least for now. Jack's behavior toward Noah was another surprise. Though he had initially seemed indifferent, perhaps even a little annoyed by the presence of my child, I began to notice moments where he softened. One afternoon, as I passed by the hallway, I heard laughter, Noah's unmistakable giggle. I peeked around the corner, and to my astonishment, Jack was crouched down by the playpen, his usually stern face breaking into the smallest of smiles as he watched Noah playing with a toy. The sight took me aback, leaving me standing there for a few moments, unsure of how to process what I had just witnessed. "Don't worry, Carmen," the housekeeper whispered to me as she noticed my surprise. "Mr. Parker's not as cold as he seems. But don't expect him to say much about it. He's still working through his own things." Her words lingered in my mind, though I didn't know what to make of them. Was it possible that Jack, beneath his distant exterior, had experienced something that had shaped him into the man he was? Perhaps he wasn't as immune to emotions as I had once thought. There was a vulnerability behind his eyes that I couldn't ignore, and it made me wonder if there was more to him than the successful businessman I had come to know. Then came the day when I caught Jack off guard with a conversation that made my heart race. I was working in the kitchen when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Jack standing there, his expression more serious than usual. "Emily," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I've noticed you've had some difficulty with your babysitter situation lately." I nodded, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "If you ever need to bring Noah to the estate again, feel free to use the small office next to the laundry room," he continued, his tone more matter-of-fact than anything else. "It's quieter there. I know it's not ideal, but it should work for now." The offer took me by surprise. I had expected him to continue to be distant, to maintain that professional barrier that had kept us apart from the start. But instead, there he was, offering me help without hesitation. "Thank you, Jack," I managed to say, my voice catching in my throat. He simply nodded and walked away, leaving me standing there with a growing sense of uncertainty. What did this mean? Why was he offering me something so personal, so significant? Was he beginning to see me as more than just an employee? The idea of that was unsettling. Yet at the same time, I felt a glimmer of hope. As the days wore on, our interactions became more frequent. Though still brief, Jack had always been a man of few words. But there was a certain softness in the way he spoke to me now. The tension that had once existed between us seemed to be melting away, replaced by an unspoken understanding. We no longer merely coexisted in the same space, we started to share it in small, unexpected ways. I noticed that Jack's gaze lingered on Noah a little longer than it used to. There were moments, rare moments, when he seemed to soften just by being in the same room with my son. And though he never spoke of it, I began to feel the shift. Jack was no longer just my boss. And I wasn't just his employee. We were becoming something more. I wasn't sure what it was yet. But the seed had been planted. And it was impossible to ignore. I only hoped that whatever it was, we could navigate it carefully. The last thing I wanted was to complicate our lives further. But something in the air between us had changed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope for the future. It's strange how life works. Sometimes, it feels as though the most unexpected events are the ones that lead to the most profound transformations. Over the weeks, I began to notice that Jack's presence in my life, and Noah's life, was no longer an anomaly. It was becoming a constant, a part of our daily rhythm. But something shifted within me as well. The more I saw Jack with Noah, the more I began to understand that his once impenetrable exterior hid a man who was capable of warmth, care, and empathy, traits I had never imagined he possessed. In his moments of silence, I could now hear the unspoken words of compassion. One quiet afternoon, as I was tending to some dishes in the kitchen, Jack appeared unexpectedly. His sudden presence took me by surprise. And I turned quickly, only to see him standing there, his usual stern expression replaced with a more thoughtful gaze. "I've been thinking about the way things are going," Jack began, his voice quiet. "You've been juggling a lot with Noah, and I know it's not easy. If you ever need help finding a more reliable babysitter, I can recommend someone." The offer caught me off guard, and my chest tightened at the thought of it. I had never expected Jack to offer something so personal. He wasn't just offering his resources or his connections, he was offering his support in a way that was much more intimate than I had anticipated. "Thank you," I said, my voice unsteady. "That would mean a lot. I've been trying to find someone, but it's been difficult." There was a quiet pause. And then he added, If you ever need to bring him here again, it's fine. I'll make sure there's a proper space for you both. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He wasn't just giving me permission to continue my work while managing Noah, he was signaling a change. A recognition that life wasn't simply about deadlines, contracts, and business. It was about people. It was about understanding the chaos that comes with being a parent. The weight of responsibility, and the small, seemingly insignificant moments that often carry the most meaning. The days that followed only deepened the bond between us. I began to feel a shift in myself too. There were moments when I caught Jack's gaze, and I noticed a vulnerability in him that I hadn't seen before. His interactions with Noah became softer, more playful. He would occasionally spend time in the same room as us. His cold demeanor replaced with an unexpected gentleness when Noah would coo at him or grab his tie. Giggling with delight. I had seen it before, of course. Parents who softened in the presence of their children, but this was different. There was something about Jack's presence in Noah's life that made the walls he had so carefully built crumble. Even if just a little. One afternoon, as I finished my work in the garden, Jack came over to me, looking more relaxed than usual. His hair was slightly tousled, and his sleeves rolled up. He had that rare, almost hesitant smile on his face. "I've been thinking," he started, rubbing the back of his neck in an uncharacteristic gesture of discomfort. "This has been good. I mean, having you both here, it's more than just business. It's different." I couldn't help but smile at the sincerity in his voice. "It has been good," I agreed, feeling the warmth of his words settle into my chest. "Noah's made a difference here, hasn't he?" Jack nodded slowly, his blue eyes gazing at Noah, who was playing with a small rubber ball in the yard. "I never expected this," he said quietly, his voice tinged with something I couldn't place. "I didn't expect to be affected, I suppose. But I've been thinking about things. About what matters. And it's not just about the work. It's about the people around you. About the connections you make. You taught me that." The words hung in the air between us. Jack, the man who had once seemed untouchable, had just shared something deeply personal. I felt a warmth spread through me. A feeling that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just the acceptance he offered me or the help he extended with Noah. It was his willingness to acknowledge his own vulnerability, to see life beyond the confines of his business empire. I hadn't realized until that moment just how much I had needed to hear it. For so long, I had struggled alone, convinced that I could manage everything by myself. But Jack had shown me that sometimes it was okay to lean on others, to accept help, and to trust that the people around you would be there when you needed them most. And so, in that quiet moment, a subtle understanding passed between us. I didn't know what the future held or how our lives would unfold. But I knew that we had just taken a significant step in our journey together. It was a small moment, but one that would echo in my heart for years to come. As I looked at Noah, laughing and playing in the grass, I realized that life had a way of surprising you, of leading you down unexpected paths. This was one of those moments, one that would change everything. It was the beginning of something new. A chance for both Jack and I to embrace a future that was no longer defined by our pasts but by the possibilities of what we could create together. I didn't know it then, but this moment, this simple exchange, was the beginning of something much deeper than I had ever anticipated. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. As the days turned into months, the bond between Emily and Jack grew stronger, and their lives began to intertwine in ways neither of them could have predicted. Jack, once a man closed off from emotions, had softened, embracing the love that came with having Noah and Emily in his life. His transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. He became not only a partner to Emily but a father to Noah in every sense of the word. Noah, who had once been a symbol of Emily's struggles, was now the light that guided them both toward a future filled with love, understanding, and a deep sense of belonging. The mansion, which had once felt cold and lonely, was now a home, filled with laughter, warmth, and the beautiful chaos of family life. Emily no longer felt alone in the world. With Jack by her side, she knew they could face whatever challenges came their way. One evening, as the three of them sat together in the garden, watching Noah run around chasing butterflies, Emily realized how far they had come. What started as an unexpected and challenging situation had blossomed into something beautiful. Something that neither of them could have imagined. Life had a way of leading them down unexpected paths. And for once, Emily embraced the uncertainty of the future, knowing that with Jack and Noah, she had everything she needed. Their journey was far from over. But one thing was clear, they had found each other. And together, they would create a life full of love, hope, and the unbreakable bond of family. If you've enjoyed this story and believe in the power of love and second chances, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming life stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned for more inspiring tales that remind us all that love has the power to heal and transform.